Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us. And indeed, our title is about this mouthful title. And actually, in layman's terms, we're going to tell you our story, how we basically started out with a startup-like architecture that wasn't really thinking about data at all, and are now in a good place today where data is much more integrated and thought of in our architecture. This is basically going to be a story where we're just going to tell you a little bit about our challenges that we literally went through. It's not going to be a perfect, beautiful story. It's going to be a bit the good, the bad, and the ugly. So actually sharing what we really encountered and how we then solved it. Such as, how do you even start with a data platform in an architecture that wasn't built for it? How do you evolve also the monolithic architecture from your startup and make sure that data isn't an afterthought anymore? And how do you make all the engineering teams aware that this is the new way of working? The format is gonna be a traveling in time story. So step with us into a time machine, into our imaginary timeline. It's not a linear timeline, but a non-linear timeline where we're having some milestones for you. And we're just going to travel one by one by them and see what was the challenge and what we learned. So let's go and hit our first milestone at the start of our timeline. What happened first? We need to introduce ourselves. That's probably, you were born.
Yeah, I was born 41 years ago. Yeah, not a secret anymore, sorry. My name is Macero. I've been working in IT for around 20 years, first as a developer, then as an architect. I also wrote a book. I do some blogging as well. I like to do a lot of stuff. Right now, I'm working as a lead architect at Sympower, now more than 2 years. When I'm not working or doing some random stuff, I really like hiking and traveling with that little kid. I didn't kidnap him, it's my kid, if you're wondering. So I like that.
All right. And I'm Alyssa. I'm the data team lead at Sympower. Started at Sympower around the same time as you did. I started back in the data industry back in 2016, but I'm also a big sustainability enthusiast. So if you want to talk about that, come to me later at the drinks. And indeed, I play music also at our company band. Enough about us. Let's tell you just the least you need to know about Sympower so you can follow also our story. This is not going to be a sales pitch, but more like the technical minimal details you need to know to follow our story. So we work at a company called Sympower, and what is our business? It's demand response. Who knows what demand response is here in the audience? Everybody? Anybody heard of it? Hands?
We have,
Nobody knows what demand response? Okay, yeah, good. I see some hands. Okay, cool. Well, then maybe you're also all in for a little electricity market 101 course here, very quickly in 2 minutes. So we work in demand response. And what is demand response about? It's about balancing the electricity grid. Okay, so the electricity grid, to operate well, needs to be in balance in terms of electricity supply and demand. There is many different mechanisms in place to establish that. Still, sometimes it happens that it doesn't match. Supply and demand is out of balance, and there are then balancing services in place that react and bring it back in balance. This is where Sympower plays. There are traditional ways to rebalance the grid, and there are new ways to do that. Traditional ways are more like traditional power suppliers with not too sustainable energy sources, either ramping up or down. It works. It has been working for the last decades, but yeah, you can say something about this way. It's not the most sustainable way. There are new opportunities, and every time I see this picture myself, what do you think of when you see this picture? Yeah, I'm always thinking about growing cannabis in my cellar or something, but anyways, this is not what it is. It's actually a greenhouse with thousands of kilowatts of lamps lighting it, warming it. And this is actually basically a new opportunity. Basically, electrical appliances that use thousands of kilowatts or even up to megawatt scale energy consumption that we could scale up or down to rebalance the grid. So that's what we do. We turn off and on resources. And that's how we do scale the grid in a more sustainable way. Okay, so that's what we do. How do we do that? We started back in 2017. How?
Yeah, so in 2017, we started in Finland with the first version of our product. We were still a small company. So what did we do in Finland? Well, we have the energy grid operator, Fingrid in this case, and we have customers, potential customers, that they have very flexible resources. They are greenhouses, they have lamps. So plants, let's say marijuana, doesn't die if you turn the lights off for a while, right? Just to put an example, a friend told me, I don't know. So then we can actually connect these greenhouses somehow together, centralize that, and then sell it as a flexible package to the energy grid operator and say, hey, if you need it, we can start turning on and off things to balance the grid. So that's a service that we offer. We are in between. So we needed to build software to meet the requirements of the energy grid operator and do this. Good thing about this business, two good things about this business. The first one, everybody makes money. So it's a nice business, right? Customers make money because they are selling their flexibility. We make money because we take a fee for offering our services. And the energy grid operator also makes money because they don't need to use non-clean energy sources, but they are also expensive. So yeah, another good thing is that we are making the world a better place because by preventing the energy grid operator from turning on these non-sustainable energy sources, we are actually reducing the CO2 footprint. So yeah, nice business. So what we built hardware and software. We install hardware at the greenhouses, and then this hardware is capable of relay-based and some other systems. It can turn on and off lamps in this use case. And then on the other side, we have a centralized platform that is actually in the cloud from the beginning that is connecting to these resources, it's gathering data, and is sending the signals to activate everything. On the other hand, we are connected to the energy grid to make sure that we react when it's needed. So for this first use case that we implemented in Finland, do you think we went for a fully blown microservices, Kubernetes system, or a service mesh, whatever, AI power, blockchain? No, we really went for a good old monolith because it was a basic use case. One country, one energy grid, simple resources. So we just went for it. I think it was a good idea. Then in 2020, we extended to Sweden, the second country. Company was a bit bigger back then. So we were expanding the business, but not like crazy, right? It was just a second country. So in Finland, what we got, our beloved monolith, we deploy it with a database, then we got a monolith instance. And by the way, we got more things apart from greenhouses back in 2020. We also got resources that were adjustable in steps, let's say. So the system was getting a bit more complicated as well. But then when we implemented the Swedish use case, we put the logic inside the monolith, but we didn't think of making the monolith dynamically switching runtime depending whether you were in Finland or Sweden. So the monolith wasn't multi-region or multi-tenant capable. So how did we solve it? Simple. We deployed another monolith instance with a separate database, multi-tenancy, the hard way. Maybe this is very familiar to many of you. So it's just a copy of the monolith. So what do you think happened next? The monolith explosion. Why? Because in Sweden, the moment we were getting customers in different regions, actually Sweden is so big that they split the energy grid in 4 regions, and they need to be operated independently. So we couldn't actually support this. And we got another partner to work with, so we actually were managing 2 different tenants. And spoiler alert, we also expanded to Greece, and there we also got 2 tenants from the beginning. And the monolith wasn't multi-region and wasn't multi-tenant. We kept expanding like this, and then what we got, wow, lots of monolith instances, different databases, different UIs. You need to log into these instances separately to manage everything. Yeah, you could say it's good or bad. Well, it's only 3 countries, not many monoliths. So, okay, fine. But there were new challenges. we were planning to expand to new countries, right? You can see how the previous picture could look like. More partners, new resource types, not only simple, but also steps, batteries, whatnot. We were throwing engineers to the organization, like, hey, welcome to the monolith. And also more features to the monolith as well, right? So yeah, it wasn't that cool anymore. The thing is that people already knew this, right? It wasn't like we suddenly, that we cannot scale with the monolith. It was something that was building up, and there were people already considering some other options as well. And then we jumped to 2022.
Yes, not coincidentally, end of 2021, I joined Sympower as sort of the first person in data for the company. And that's also marking the start of the data platform because, well, why would you need a data platform if you have all these monoliths rocking in all these countries, right? Let's see. I entered the company and two problems were quite apparent. One, there was a Slack channel called Data Requests, and well, at least once a day, some person, mostly more from the operational, from the business side, popped a message in that channel asking, hey, someone, please, I need this data, I don't have access to it, can you please get it for me? And then some engineer would just go into the monolith databases, scrape it together, and send it in a CSV file or an Excel file if they were lucky to them. So I arrived and they're like, hey, there is a data team now, so you can do this for us, right? You can now take over this data requests. Okay. Secondly, there were quickly two people approaching me, mentioning that they were in charge of a critical daily forecasting process that they were doing in Excel by just every day downloading some data with SQL statements from the monolith databases, also looking at some websites and yeah, doing their magic. Okay, that could maybe also improve. So what now? I had one other colleague, so two data team members, no data infrastructure in place, no automatic ML, no VI dashboards or self-service data. But live in 4 countries, 500 megawatt, lots of data in these monolithic databases, and there is actually data everywhere in the company. It's just not stored or served in the way that's useful for these use cases. So, time to make data a important person, at least, IP in Sympower, and start with our data platform. So I established, okay, what are the responsibilities? Forecasting, we're going to automate these critical daily forecasting use cases, and also bring some insights to the company with automated data insights so they can make their data-informed decisions. Sounding very cool and buzzy, but okay, let's actually do it. So, okay, what are we going to build? And are we going to build it all at once? I made this picture literally my first month in, saying like, hey, Sympower's data platform could start to look like this. It's a goal architecture, a mature data platform that is connected to the future Sympower platform. Today it has only monolithic PostgreSQL databases and some dumps on S3, sure, but it will also have messages via a message broker. It will have microservices potentially. We were already thinking about that. And external sources, we can also automatically gather them, store them in a lakehouse, have machine learning capabilities, and a service layer out again with dashboards, but also output streams back into the Sympower platform and back to the teams. So, how are we going to start with such a platform? Are we just going to build all these components ourselves? Or are we going to use a bunch of cloud services and tie them all together? Or are we just going for a third-party service and get a multi-toolbox and get going? That last option actually for us was better because of the small team we had at the time. So we went for Databricks and Power BI for the business analytics layer for serving the dashboards, and that got us going real quickly without spending our time and basically being able to focus on creating the value with these actual business cases. Okay, maybe not ideal. The data is currently in all these monolithic PostgreSQL databases. We're just gonna get the data from there every day, either full or incremental load, depending on the type of data. It's not ideal maybe, but it will get us going and we can start proving value, getting us to our first MVP data platform where we're still warning, scraping monolith databases. But hey, we have a first forecasting pipeline live, proving its value, a first dimensional star model that people can use as an analytics layer and get some insights with. A first dashboard out, not yet an output stream, but sure, people can get their data in a coherent way in our platform. So, data is in a better place, but it's not gonna end there. And I think it's time to learn what happened to all these monoliths.
Yes, so yeah, we had a monolithic architecture, we had a data platform, and now let's connect with by the end of 2022, there were already some initiatives, a lot of design about how to do the replatforming. And then by the end of 22 is when we actually start taking steps to make it happen. So the first thing that happened is that we mapped all the logic that was built over the years in the spaghetti way within the monolith. We mapped it into different domains. So that's the first thing that we tried to design. And this is actually the result. So we found out that we could have some domains that we could reuse across countries and make it multi-tenant, multi-country. And we could have other domains that would be more on the integration side per country, per business case that we would implement. And then as you can see there is also the space for the data that Elisa will zoom in a bit later. So apart from defining the domains, something really important, even more important than defining the domains, is that we also analyzed what were the data entities that would be the interfaces in between these domains, which kind of information these domains need to exchange with each other, what are the interfaces, right? So that's also something that happened, and we had a few design sessions. And then, to make it happen, we also applied a bit of reverse conway here, and then there was also an organizational change. Some teams, they were created to actually build this core part of the platform, and then there were other teams that would take care of the implementation of the end-to-end flow and also the market, let's say the country side of things. And then on the technical side, once we figure out also a bit high level how that could look like, of course, it has evolved over time. On the technical side, we went for a microservices architecture. So that would map to the domains that I've shown before. Of course, there could be more microservices than domains, but that is normal. And also an event-driven architecture with a message broker. We use Pulsar for that. And then also very important, we gave, again, a space for the data platform, and we also designed how the data platform should take data from the rest of the platform. But that's something, again, that Elisa will dive into. So, of course, that's the vision. And then if you want to know where we are at the moment, we have evolved quite a while. So we have a few microservices already that take big part of the logic of the platform, but we still have the multiple monolith instances per country, aside of the microservices that are multi-country, multi-tenant. So we put an anti-corruption layer, we call it the monolith gateway, in between the services and the monolith. So this thingy abstracts all the plumbing of going to monoliths and aggregate stuff. And then we are also applying a strangler pattern in the monolith to shrink it and to make sure that we extract logic aside. So far, it's going quite well. So.
All right. So now that these microservices come around the corner, what are we going to do to make data a real VIP? Well, the first microservices are there. So we can also, they will produce data. We can start consuming that. But still, there are some challenges for the data platform that we started to tackle. You have to imagine that if you have this great goal architecture in mind, you're not getting there at once, right? Like Moises explained. So the schema changes of those operational Postgres databases that we actually now starting to rely on for our critical daily forecasting and self-service data processes, they sometimes change. And then what happens to the data pipelines ingesting them? They can break. So that's not really nice at the moment. How data would be interchange between those microservices and the data platform is also a new topic that people started talking about. Because, okay, it's quite clear and established, and there's guidelines how microservices should exchange data, but what about exchanging it with the data platform? And what data should even be going into the data platform? Should we just dump everything into it? Is that a good idea? Or should we do it maybe a bit more refined and think about what are good use cases? So first thing we did back in 2023, when this all became more and more important, we made the engineering teams aware of the data platform that was now there. Because first, okay, how can we do that? We just started sharing knowledge. Hey guys, we are actually dependent on the data in your operational databases for some critical processes. Please tell us if you're planning to do a schema change that will break it, okay? Good, first step. But not going so far, still people forgot us sometimes. Then we added an automatic PR tag. So basically, whenever somebody made a pull request that was also including a schema migration, we would automatically be included as reviewers. This already helped. At least it was a bit ad hoc, and we sometimes had to jump in quite fast. But at least we were notified that something was coming. And more teams got aware and involved us up front that, well, something is changing. But this was going so far, and we already looked a bit ahead. How can we maybe make really a test, an integration test, a contract test between us and the engineering teams? Because scraping operational databases, you can get started with it, but actually, like with the microservices, basically communicating via events, and in our case, asynchronous events, is much nicer. It's actually ideal in our case to use asynchronous events, so this message broker produced events for the data platform, and also for us to produce back in that way, because we're not real-time critical, and we can then, in our own time, with batch processes, or sometimes with streaming processes, process the data, do our things, and publish back. And again, this is not happening in one night, right? You're not establishing these principles and these goal architecture, and then you're moving over and it's done. No, project by project, we got closer to the ideal. So where we still had these old projects around, when we did something new, we would be looking like, okay, how can we actually get those important data topics now from in the target architecture way, switching over from scraping them from the Postgres database to pools our messages. And this is still ongoing, actually, as we speak right now. Contract test. I think a presentation at this conference is not a good presentation if it doesn't have one screenshot of code, so here it is. We are doing contract tests, so either as consumer or producer of those pulsar topics, of those messages, we basically establish like what do we expect. And if then the producer changes what they're actually publishing, well, the contract test fails and we can talk about it. And then what data goes into the data platform? Well, if we make it really clear which components the data platform is responsible for, that also becomes much easier. So reusing this picture that Moises showed you earlier, okay, if these are the responsibilities and the domains that the data platform is responsible for, what are the interfaces and what data needs to go in there to actually deliver those services? It becomes easier. And with every feature that we're adding or new part of the sub-product that we're adding to the product, we can really into the data flows, into the component flows, really picture like, okay, this is where the data platform comes in. This is the contract it relies on. This is what it expects. That's where we are today. You actually have landed now with us in this time machine today. But there is more, right? We're also looking ahead. What happens after today? And we have one final thing to say about that. How can we make an even more mature data organization?
Thank you. So yeah, you probably have seen this graph I stolen from the internet as usual. And then it's showing you that, yeah, you need to combine dev and ops. And now, of course, dev, security, and ops. And then what we are making is people aware of data also in this development process. So I want to embrace that each one of us embrace the term DevDataSecOps, because we are making this up. But you can go and update your LinkedIn if you feel identified with this, because it sounds really fancy. So yeah, this is what we are trying to make people aware of data. So the takeaways of today, just to finalize.
Yeah, I mean, data is the new oil. I didn't invent that saying, but don't forget to design it in each phase of your architecture, how the data platform fits in.
Use the architecture that is appropriate for your company's stage. I mean, we started with a monolith, but then later, make sure that you mature it and establish explicit data dependencies. You cannot survive with the monolith. In our case, we couldn't have survived with it for too long. So yeah, it's important to identify that and also to identify the data dependencies and to make them explicit.
Yeah, and finally, well, bring this back to your teams. Maybe talk about this. Is DevDataSecOps a thing for your teams, for your organization? We think it's important and we should think about it. So with that said, I think thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for attending our talk. Yeah?
Yeah, we are hiring, by the way.